Hey guys, it's Mitch. How's it going? We're taking a look today at Gideon Falls by Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino. So, if you recall a couple of days ago when I did The Long Halloween, the Batman book, I said how great it was to look through a comic and know that it was just designed to be a comic. It was just a matter of presenting the events in the best way possible from a storytelling perspective, given the media that the story was in. This one kind of goes the other way. This one is another one like Something is Killing the Children, where it feels primed for a Netflix series of some kind, or maybe even like a movie or two. So this is Gideon Falls, and this is kind of a horror mystery book. This is another one of those ones that I got when I was trying to get back into comics, and okay, what should I get? What's good? What does everybody like? And a bunch of lists said Gideon Falls was their favorite horror book. Or in some cases, I'm sure it's probably their favorite book. And I thought I had read it, but I took another look at it today, and I realized that I only read the first issue before and then must have gotten sidetracked or something and set it aside and never got back to it. And the first issue is probably the worst issue of this in terms of the pacing. It's extremely slow. It doesn't get you particularly invested as far as I'm concerned. This is basically two stories. The first story is about a guy in New York. Is it New York? I don't even know what they say. I think it's New York. But this guy has a compulsion. He has to search through garbage in search of artifacts, essentially. He's not 100% sure what the artifacts are. He just knows that they're extremely important and they have to do with something called the Black Barn, which is what the comic is all about, really. And I don't think he even really understands what the Black Barn is, at least not at the beginning, other than that he knows that it's evil. And not in an abstract way. It's something that's bent on destruction, like the destruction of human lives. And he's got a psychiatrist that he sees because, he's got, it's very clearly like a disorder of some kind, at least from an outsider's perspective. And she's, trying to, help him get better. And, he makes a bit of progress and then he seems to get worse. And then an event happens that kind of makes her start to wonder if maybe what he's seeing is true. So that's one storyline. The other storyline is a priest who, with a checkered past, he used to have a problem with the drink. And he goes to a small town. The small town has just lost their minister. And he's the guy who's been sent to fill in. And there's some weird shenaniganery going on in the small town. Pretty much right away, he sees the priest that he was sent to replace. And it's like, wait a minute, aren't you supposed to be dead? And then he chases after it and sees the Black Barn. And in the wake of seeing the Black Barn, he finds a dead body, one of the locals the woman who first greeted him when he showed up. And the only conclusion anybody can come to is that the priest was somehow still alive and must have murdered her, which, just puts like a weird pall over the town. But it turns out there's this group of what appear to be nutcases who are all obsessed with the Black Barn, have been since the turn of the century, like the turn of the last century. And they're all about investigating the Black Barn and finding out what it is, really, because they don't really know. None of them has actually seen it. They just know that it's somehow linked to everything that's gone wrong with this small town in the last 100 years. And that's kind of this first volume. It's these two stories that are linked by whatever the Black Barn is. The Black Barn was apparently inspired by the Black Lodge in Twin Peaks, but it goes in a very different direction from where the Black Lodge went. Intentionally so. The writing is pretty good. Again, other than that pacing issue. Like, okay, when we first show up, we've got the guy in New York, and he's, relentlessly hunting for whatever he's hunting for. It's a little difficult to even tell what it is at first. And that part's all fine. It moves at a reasonable pace. And then we get to the small town and everything slows way down. Like you've got a full page of the priest here driving into town. And it's like, I don't know that we needed that exactly. I think that could have been done a little bit better. And you get a lot of that. Part of that I'm sure is intentional. Like, that small town feeling, everything moves at a slower pace. But it's a slow drip getting into this comic, at least in terms of the first issue. By the time I got to the end of the volume, I was invested. It's actually a very good story and seems to have a pretty good lore. The characters are not bad. I won't go so far as to say that they're the most engaging characters. But they're, believable enough in the context of the story. And it does eventually come together nicely and build up momentum over the course of this first volume, which was the first 6 issues collected. The artwork is a little hit or miss for me. Like, when it hits hard. There's a strong sense of design on a lot of these pages. Stuff like this, you get a few crazy double-page splashes, like this fishbowl shot, where we get the entirety of our New York guy's room when we go into it. And it's just kind of a nasty place. And there is a fair amount of that. And whenever that happens, I'm totally invested. And I want to see like this kind of stuff here. Like, it's really wild. There's a great design sense. It has a bit of Tim Bradstreet problem for me, in that an awful lot of it seems to be referenced. Not all of it, I'm sure, but so much of it looks so realistic, at least in terms of outline. There's, obviously a very definite style over it, but it's a very realistic world, to the point where when you get to that like near photorealism, I start to lose interest. It might be like an uncanny valley effect a little bit, or it might just be a case of, well, okay, if you're going to do that, why not just take photos? Like, show us your reference photos. You didn't have to draw all this. Tim Bradstreet has the same effect on me, where it's all so obviously referenced and posed, and it's all from photos. And it's, okay, so then you just drew your weird little noodly details all over everything. I don't think I can get into that. But yeah, like I said, when it hits, it's extremely effective. Like, all the stuff with the Black Barn looks great. And the Black Barn itself is a menacing presence that hangs over the entire story. Like, it takes a while to get going, where it's like, okay, but how is the Black Barn influencing anything? And then eventually you see some events that the Black Barn influenced, and it's kind of horrifying. And then you're like, okay, well, that's cool. Are we going to see inside the Black Barn? And you know what? We might. And if we might go in, it might be very interesting and weird and visual. And this is all just the first volume. I would like to go, and I think I have the second volume, and I think I should try and find that and dig it out and see where things are going. Because, yeah, like I said, I was invested by the time I got to the end of the first volume. It just took a while to get there. So, from what I understand, this has been optioned, and there is a TV series, or probably a TV series, that's been lined up for this. Now, the writer, Jeff Lemire, said that, that wasn't going to affect the comic. The comic was his focus, which I appreciate. And he finished the story somewhere around issue 27, I think it was. So I like that. I like a story where the writer has a definite endpoint in mind and has a pretty clear idea of the points he wants to hit along the way. It happens every once in a while. We're like, oh yeah, this is going to be a 3-year story. And then you get to year 4. It's like, what happened? Well, we kept making money. So we had to find a way to stretch that shit out. And that doesn't seem to be the case here. From what I can gather, it's a cohesive story. Like I said, this is on a lot of people's lists for top horror book. So I found out about it late. Surprise, surprise. I did eventually read it today. And I can say, yeah, it's really good. I kind of want to see how it ends up. So that's going to do it for Gideon Falls. We got one more spooky season episode to go. I'll find, if I got to do Hellboy or something, I guess I can do Hellboy. It's not like, nobody's heard of Hellboy, right? Or The Walking Dead. I got a Walking Dead trade or two. That's reasonably low notoriety. I think I can get away with that one. Anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.